given that it's got a long history of kind of failure? And if we do, at what scale? Like do we look for gift economy or barter?
Bordering on a statement there, buddy.
Well, we wouldn't want to reboot it into the form that it is now. So it's not that we just want to restart the current system, because it's pathological. And we don't want to go back to money as debt and a whole range of other things that we regard as normal now, without really understanding what they are now. We want to do it differently. We do need to reboot the system in the sense that we don't want to leave it in a state where nothing works and you can't connect anybody, because there's no liquidity in the system and everything just comes to a grinding halt. You wouldn't want to leave it that way and have a state of permanent economic depression. What you would want is to reboot it into something that actually works and has a more solid foundation. And when it comes to scale, absolutely it's going to start small. So you're probably going to go through the same progression we went through when we instituted money in the first place, going from gift economies and barter and reciprocity to something that then, as the recovery builds, can work at a larger scale. And so you've got then local currencies and things like that. And we can scale it up to whatever the trust will support. So where the trust horizon lies really determines what sort of things will be workable, what geographical extent things will be able to operate at, and what sort of scale and degree of sophistication. So I do think we're going to get back to something that looks beyond just barter and gift exchange, because that barter and gift exchange only function at a profoundly local scale. And with the number of people we have, I think that would be too disjointed. You wouldn't be reaching out and building trust to the extent you could if you allowed it to scale up a bit more and be a bit more sophisticated. You don't really want to have to introduce something that looks too much like very local tribalism, because if you're not building trust between small groups of people, then there can be mistrust that builds up and things, and that can have consequences in its own way. If we can go beyond the scale of the profoundly local as we start to recover and reach out and work on the basis of trust with more distant people, then I think we're knitting together a larger group of people. And the more people you can knit together over time, the more you can do. You can start to get back to something a little bit more complex. It's not that complexity is the enemy. Hyper-complexity is unsustainable. But there are very good reasons you would want elements of complexity and differentiation, because you don't want everyone to have to do everything, for instance. It really is much more effective if we can have a certain amount of specialization of skills and then train those skills for someone else's skills. That level of complexity is pretty basic, but that can be really important. Even that may be hard to support when you're working at the most profoundly local level that you may end up working at for a while in the depths of depression. You really want to be able to build up to something more sophisticated than those very basic levels. Because as long as you don't go beyond a certain scale and you don't start to get into pathological levels of complexity again, a certain amount of complexity is really, really adaptive. Because it really encourages people to work together. If everyone's just looking after themselves and trying to cover all bases, it's not a particularly efficient way of doing it, and it doesn't encourage people to interact with each other and build relationships. And I would very much rather encourage people to build relationships, to have that degree of specialization and to scale things up beyond the profoundly local.